Today, on a serious note, Rania, I did just want to note, one important issue that is, unfortunately not known to many people around the world, and that is the ongoing persecution of our very good friends here at Breakthrough News of the journalist at Newsclick in India. Newsclick in India, many people don't know, is the #1 news site for the struggles of working class people, the farmers, all these other pieces. If you remember, obviously we've seen the farmers protest this year, but if you remember the big farmers protest that happened, I guess that was 2022 now, not 2023, but I might be wrong about that. Either way, Newsclick was really doing more than any other outlet in India or anywhere around the world to bring the voice of the farmers directly to the forefront. When the Indian trade unions had the biggest strike that's ever happened, they were there at the forefront. In the southern Indian state of Kerala, which has a communist government that does many very interesting things, including around COVID. They were at the forefront of bringing that to the attention of the world. They've engaged on a range of different issues that are crucially important for all of us. The People's Science movement there in India has found a voice from Newsclick talking about the important and critical elements of how we use knowledge. And I say all that just to say that, Puryear, who is the head of Newsclick, is currently imprisoned in India. He is being held in indefinite detention under a set of laws called UAPA, which are, just a mockery of any, sense of democracy. It basically allows you to hold people indefinitely with no evidence whatsoever. They have created now and they've brought to the forefront this totally fake charge sheet with Puryear, and they've tried to make it seem legitimate by having it be 8,000 pages long. I can only imagine what is in those 8,000 pages. But nonetheless, they are accusing Puryear, and by extension, Newsclick and everyone affiliated with them, of being agents of China that are, in Indian terminology, anti-national and are trying to overthrow the government. And that, just to give you a sense. So because they reported on the farmers that were protesting the policies of not just the Modi government, but several governments prior to that had impoverished the farmers, because they're supporting the workers who are fighting for higher wages and better working conditions, because they're talking about critical issues for India and how India relates to the country of the region, because they're discussing laws like the Citizenship Amendment Act and also some of the things around Kashmir, which are obviously critical, important issues domestically to how India runs its country. They have been labeled as agents of China, as trying to take down the government. And the whole reason they're being labeled like this is because they're willing to report the uncomfortable facts about the government there in India, and not just the government, but more importantly, the big business interests that lie behind the BJP government and have lied behind, quite frankly, many other governments beyond that. It's not like they're just criticizing Modi or anything like that. They're criticizing everybody who is doing things against their sort of core base, which is peasants and workers and other progressive people there in India. This is obviously a part of a bigger, broader crackdown that is happening all across India on progressive people by this attempt by the BJP government to turn India, which is obviously a great country of much diversity, into a one-note, semi-fascist, right-wing billionaires paradise. 1% of the population in India controls 40% of the wealth, and that might even be an understatement, but that fact came out several weeks ago. But we have seen, so many people, so many activists who have been victimized under this UAPA law. Unfortunately, Father Stan, one of them, actually died in prison. They held him there so long that he died. He was suffering from Parkinson's. They wouldn't give him any health conditions. So Puryear, who is also older, it's a very dangerous situation. He was actually the first person arrested in the emergency in 1975 when Indira Gandhi, ended sort of the democratic period there in India for several years. And now he's become one of the signal people. There are elections starting in India in just a couple weeks, and I don't think that it's any mistake that this, so-called charge sheet that has no evidence, and it's important to note that there is no evidence here. And in fact, in the public sphere, for those who want to go look, the lawyers for Newsclick and for others who have been named in this have in fact put forward in the Hindu, which is the paper of record amongst other places in India, the exact facts of the case, that no money was received from any Chinese government or Chinese Communist Party-led entity, that in fact an American individual has been falsely labeled as a Chinese spy, and that this money that was totally legal, the finances of Newsclick that complied with every single law that's on the books in India. There is no truth to this whatsoever. And unfortunately, the New York Times is a major part of this, because they wrote a story David Fahrenholt is the author, if you want to find him on social media and let him know how you feel about this, that said that these lies were true. They also had no evidence, but they claim that NewsClick was part of a worldwide Chinese conspiracy. Even us at Breakthrough News were caught up in this. And this totally fake yellow journalism by David Fahrenholt, so-called reporter at the New York Times, the so-called all the news that's fit to print, has been used by the Indian government and certainly by the right-wing, handmaidens of the Indian government on this case to try to suggest that Puryear and others are agents of China. Nothing could be further from the truth. NewsClick, of course, has only been standing up for the rights of they've just been covering the Indian people who are standing up for their rights, to exercise democracy in a real sense. It's social, economic, as well as political. And of course, we're seeing many different things. Arvind Kejriwal, of course, the chief minister of Delhi, who has been arrested. There's another chief minister of another state who's been arrested. We're seeing an increase in these cases. So in the context of, and I'll just get ready to close on this, Rania. In the context of the elections, it's very clear that these cases are being used as political pawns, to really try to drive votes for the BJP by creating the perception that there's a Chinese plot and also actually an American plot if you read what they're saying. Interesting how they say that they're basically doing the same thing at the same time, to try to take down the country, to try to drive a nationalistic vote towards the BJP, to cover up, many of the crimes that they're committing, the terrible bigotry that's happening against Muslims, the criminalization of farmers and workers organizations, the brutal attacks that their workers are carrying out in the election campaign towards the left and towards others, burning down and bulldozing people's houses, attacking people, beating people. But nonetheless, it's all designed to create this fake reality. And I think it's important to say, and this is why I wanted to say it on this show, because there is an effort that is going on right now. Look, I'm not saying this to be like against Russian media or anything like that, but it's being amplified in English heavily by these Russian media outlets, RT and Sputnik. People who know me know I used to work at Sputnik, so I'm not out here just to rip them. But it's a BJP narrative that all of the criticism of India is a U.S. George Soros plot to take down India, to move it into the pro-imperialist camp. And to be fair, there are attempts by liberal forces and imperialist forces to influence the politics of India. I'm not denying that. But if there is no doubt in my mind, it's that NewsClick and the people around NewsClick and the political parties of the left in India are the biggest enemies of imperialism in India. When the BJP was okay with working with the United States as they are now in the anti-China conspiracy, because that's what they're for. They're part of this fake Indo-Pacific. When Congress signed was working with them to sign the deal with the United States in 2004, these were the only people who really stood up. So we have to make sure that we have clarity here, about what's happening in India, and that we don't sort of, wrap up, that I just don't want people to get caught up in this because it's fake. It's totally fake. And we need to continue to raise our voices. If you go to 1804books.com, 1804books.com, you can buy Puryear's newest book, which is called Knowledge as Commons, which is a great book about the uses and abuses of technology in the 21st century. But very important to recognize that this so-called charge sheet is completely and totally fake. No Chinese money was coming to them. This is complete demonization, and it's part of a worldwide campaign by right-wing political forces to try to isolate China on the world stage to prevent them from, having any sort of influence that could check the rise of U.S. imperialism by making every single progressive movement anywhere in the world a so-called agent of China. It's happening there. It's happening in South Africa. It's happening all over. But it's really, really dangerous, and it's really, really unfortunate. So I just wanted to note that as we go into election season in India, because I think that there's a lot of misinformation going around about this.